Good evening, Real Fish Talk. This is Joe coming to you from San Antonio, Texas, and my goal is to talk about the jigs that I presented on my picture with the bass pictures last week in less than 5 minutes. I'll try. All right, here we go. So I had some folks reach out asking how to make these, and just for those folks, I will have a how-to series in the next few weeks. We have a cold front coming in, which will help moderate temperatures here in Central Texas, which will give me the opportunity to hang out more in my garage. Because right now it's like way too hot, unbearable. And but just quickly, just talk about these jigs here and what I'm using, what I use to catch those bass. So honestly, over the years, I've used different types of jigs, and so you can see here some of the feather ones here that I have. Pretty common. I think you've seen these all over the place: Walmart, Academy, Bass Pro, Cabela's, Shields, all these places, right? And for me, I wanted to do something a little bit different. These marabou jigs and with the feathers do really well. I found up north when I lived in Nebraska, and I was able to fish out there, even to some extent the Carolinas, but more so in the Midwest. And then when I moved down to San Antonio, here in Central Texas, they didn't really work as well for me. I couldn't really. I'm sure that for some folks they figured them out and they figured out the formula and they're doing really well. For me, I wasn't really successful with them, so I said, let me try something different. And I'm always experimenting. This is what I call my Frankenstein box of jigs, because look at all those different type of jigs I create just to experiment with. And and you can tell these are kind of rough. They're not really refined. The best that I've made before, because the goal was not for beauty. It was more for functionality, to see if it worked or not before I kind of jumped into a full production of these jigs. So this is the one similar. This has the brown body. I have the one with the watercolor body. I forgot what the name of it is, but I'll share those in the comments in the next couple of days. And of course, I super glued some eyes on them. And this is actually a chartreuse, jig, but I couldn't find the black ones in the same size, so I just painted them, and they work really well. Here's the kicker: when I caught those fish, I use them under a bobber, weighted bobbers. These aren't the big ones; these are the smaller ones. But I can cast a country mile, and they're easy to adjust. I do use slip bobbers when I'm fishing past 12 feet, 10 to 12 feet deeper than that, because I need to really get down there. And these obviously if you try to go 10, 12 feet with these on yours, or even 9 feet, you're going to hit the rod and you're still going to have all that line in the water. So these don't work for that type of application. But if you're fishing like in a river system, like for me, where it's about, 3 to 7-ish feet sometimes, these work perfect because you can dial in your zone. And what I mean by dial in, I use the sonar. So if you haven't watch my sonar video, go back in my history. There's a video where I'm using a sonar. I'm still using it today, and it's still working really well. For the pricing, obviously it's not a what do you call it? A Vexler that I use for ice fishing. Those really sensitive sonars for ice fishing, but it works well for just short applications. For me, I use it to really find out where the bottoms are at. Right? How deep is it? What's water temperature, more or less? More so the bottoms, because I want to fish depending where the fish are hovering, or potentially could be hovering. I want to fish right above them and really entice them to strike. Or maybe if they're really sluggish, you go all the way down to the ground and just kind of fish the 7-foot, 6-foot drop, at the bottom. Anyway, so I use this guy here under a bobber. I'll use like a 10 to 12 pound fluoro on a braided fishing line, a braided fishing reel. The reason for that, obviously we all know, it's a little more transparent line. They don't spook as easy, the fish. The thinner the line, the less we can see it. The downside, thinner the line, the more fragile it is too. That's what happened to me when I lost fish last week, because I was using such a light fluorocarbon, but I was getting more bites. But the trade-off was that I lost 2 fish because the lines broke. So I was kind of disappointed in that. I'm like, okay. And the other thing, more of an environmental impact, is that when you go fishing with fluoro and you get it stuck on something, and you can pop that fluoro line off, that 5 to 6 inches of line, 8 inches, and not have to cut like, I don't know how many feet of braid along with your leader. So, you can, because you can't pull it out, right? So you're going to have to leave it in the water. Well, that becomes a nuisance for wildlife and for other fisher folks that are there. So I tend to use a leader so this can just break off if I get stuck and so forth. And it's a smaller line in the water. Anyway, I digress. Now, when I use these, I use them under a bobber, like I said, a leader with a swivel. And then I will actually cut these Berkeley Power Bait 2-inch grubs in black or white cut them in half, and I'll use the tail, the presentation, to complete the ensemble, basically. So I'll have this little guy here. It'll have this tail here. So when I'm doing it, and you probably noticed already the skirt on the jig, and I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, we exceeded 5 minutes. All right, I kind of thought I would overtalk this. Anyway, so you can see there, it gives you a larger presentation in the water. So it looks more like a regular sized minnow as opposed to maybe a little water bug or something like that. So, it does create that strike. The best part is that when you're fishing these is the drop. So you're using a bobber, you pull in the water every so many seconds, like every 10, 15 seconds I'm pulling just to create that action on the actual, and then let it drop because of the weight. And when it pulls, these little guys flatten out, and when it stops, it opens up again. So it creates that additional movement that could create that reactionary strike from a bass or other predator fish, right? And so it works really well for the setup. You can obviously fish and cast with these. In the spot that I'm in, it's a heavily pressured lake, so casting sometimes doesn't work really well. But I will be testing it with an ultralight here in the next couple weeks as well, to see how well they do in that. You can see I have different variations. I have a brown here, a very small, I think it's 32nd, I think the higher number, or 64, pretty small. But here's the kicker. I use, not kicker, but necessarily what I use for these, my spinner baits, I like the presentation of the actual skirts. So I went to Bass Pro, and I also ordered some from Amazon, and I'll probably order some from Mud. I think it's Mud Hole or something like that. I'll order some different colors, and I'm using them for the tails. Now, the reason for that, again, I kind of already alluded to one of them, like when you're darting through the water, they kind of hold their structure a little bit more, but they will collapse on you. Like they'll collapse a little bit because of the velocity, but then they'll spread out again, and that creates a little bit extra movement. And of course, they're durable. I've caught several fish on one of the jigs, and they don't tear up at all. Like they're pretty durable. And they have a little bit of fleck on them, so you get a little bit extra, glittery type of light on these too. So again, I just took a skirt, cut it to length, and I wrapped it on these, and I think these are my favorite. Now, this is a white version, and it's a little bit longer. You can see this one. When they're longer, they create that more flowy type of thing, more action, which I think is cool. I haven't tested this one yet. I will. This is a lot smaller. I get concerned with smaller jigs because they get stuck in the bluegill's mouth or their throats, and I don't want to hurt them. So I tend to stay away from these more often. I'll go for the bigger fish. But again, yeah, and this is an experimental. Like I have a ton of experimental ones. Here's one where I'm using more of a different type of a presentation here. Similar, but you see, these are very rustic. They don't look very clean. They look kind of like just thrown together, which that's intended by design because again, these are prototypes. I'm testing all these. As I refine these, I'll go ahead and make them a lot prettier, a lot nicer, durable. You're welcome to replicate all these. I don't really care if you go out and replicate these and sell them on Temu, whatever. This is just for my personal collection that I use, and hopefully if you're a jig builder and you want to build these for your personal collection, I think you'll have great success just like I have. All right, guys, well, that's it. I exceeded my time by over 3 minutes, but I think it was worth it. And next week, or in 2 weeks, I'm sorry, I'll have a video on fishing journals. Writing while you're fishing, huh? Doesn't sound fun, but it actually is really cool. All right, guys, well, we'll talk soon. Until then, stay safe. See you on the water. Take care.